Good morning, everyone, and thank all of you for being here today. Is Brooklyn in the house? Before we begin, there are some people we have here in the audience that I would like to acknowledge. First, our host of Medgar Evers College and president, Rudy Crew. And we have a number of names, so please applaud after I complete all of the names. Please hold your applause. Thank you. Senator Jesse Hamilton, Senator Roxanne Prasad, Assembly Member Walter Mosley, Council Member Matthew Eugene, Council Member Raphael Espinal, Council Member Robert Cornegie, Veronica Turner, the Senior Executive Vice President of 1199, former Assembly Member Annette Robinson, Leroy Barr, Assistant Secretary and Staff Director of UFT, Earl Phillips, the Secretary Treasurer of TWU Local 100, the Reverend Dr. Herbert Doherty of House of the Lord Church, the Reverend Dr. Robert Waterman of Antioch Baptist Church, Alfonso David, Counsel to the Governor, Kareem Kamara, former Assembly Member, and now Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Faith-Based Community Development Services, Dr. Howard Zucker, the Commissioner of the New York State Department of Health, Rose Harvey, the Commissioner of New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, and Sam Roberts, the Commissioner of New York State Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, and representing the office of Congressmember Hakeem Jeffries, Mr. William Harris. Let's give them all a round of applause. And of course, I want you to give a warm welcome to Governor Cuomo. Governor, it's great to have you back in Brooklyn. And whenever the governor is here, he always brings good news. And I am excited to see what he has to deliver today, right? Over the past 6 years, Governor Cuomo has worked tirelessly to improve the quality of life for the residents of Brooklyn and those across the entire state. The governor has focused on what matters most to New Yorkers: raising the minimum wage, proposing college access programs, increasing WMBE participation, improving programs like universal pre-K, creating jobs, driving innovation, so that all of our students and all Brooklynites, we can achieve our full potential. And today you're going to see more. And so we want to thank Governor for being with us today, and thank him for all that he is doing for Brooklyn, and thank him for standing up for Brooklyn. And so now, please welcome the 56th Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you, darling. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It is my pleasure to be back in Brooklyn. First, to our great public advocate, Tish James. I love Tish James because she brings the fire, doesn't she? She brings the fire. Those women from Brooklyn, they just bring the fire. My mother is a woman from Brooklyn, and I can tell you she brought the fire. But Tish James is doing a fantastic job. She's public advocate. She's fighting for the people, and we are so proud of her. Did I hear 1199 was in the house? 1199, who has been such a great partner to all the progressive causes. Pleasure to be with them and TWU. President Rudy Crew, who's running this great school. I'm going to talk very fast today because he's charging us rent, so it's by the hour. But President, thank you very much for having us here and the great job you do. Rudy Crew. To Reverend Daughtry and the other reverends who are here, thank you for being with us. And also, Reverends, thank you for what you do on community development and stabilizing communities all across this city. Really, one of the great institutions that has always been there, always making a difference, are our churches. We thank you very much, Reverend. Thank you. I'm excited about today because this is a different kind of undertaking for us. And I can argue probably one of the most important undertakings that government can initiate. And it's something I've been involved in all my life, and something I'm now excited about to be able to make a real difference as governor of the state. As you heard from the public advocate, the legislators who are here today, my colleagues in the Assembly, my colleagues in the Senate, they should feel very good. They have done more progress in state government in the past 6 years than you have seen in the previous 60 years. This state, historically, was the first, was the foremost, was the fighter for progressive values. And it was the state that set the progressive agenda for the entire nation. Everybody followed New York. New York went first. I don't want to sound like a typical arrogant New Yorker, but I am. New York had a special role in that we went first. That's what we always did. Civil rights movement started here. Women's rights movement started here. Environmental movement started here. Workers' rights movement started here. All the great progressive movements. And New York led the way. And we're doing it once again. After a lot of decades where New York was sort of floundering, we are now leading the way. The best, smartest gun safety program in the United States of America we passed right here in the state of New York. We passed the $15 minimum wage, the best minimum wage in the state, in this state, and it is now leading the nation. You know, once New York does something, every other politician in the country, they get the microphone in their face the next day and they say, well, New York passed 15. What are you going to do? We passed marriage equality. First big state to pass marriage equality. Resonated all across the nation. We passed the paid family leave bill, the last legislature, best paid family leave in the United States of America. So, when we pass a piece of legislation like this, you do a statewide effort, you affect 18 million people. You change the lives for 18 million people. And we've done very, very well on that level. But government can also do something else. Government can also do intensely focused, targeted initiatives, right? You can do a piece of legislation for 18 million people, or you can focus on one geographic area and make an intense effort in one geographic area. That requires government to operate. Now, historically, governments have not operated well. When you think about efficiency and effectiveness, you don't automatically think of government, right? Government, you think more of bureaucracy, et cetera. And we've seen that across the country. We've seen that in New York. Not anymore. I want to show not only can we pass great laws that make a difference all across the board, but government can actually get results for people and can actually operate and make a difference. Second Avenue subway, we just opened in January in Manhattan. They talked about it for 100 years, literally. It was like a joke, you know. I'll pay you back when they opened the Second Avenue subway, right? Because it was never going to happen, the Second Avenue subway. And we focused on it, and we got it done. It's in Manhattan. It is beautiful. There's a bridge called the Tappan Zee Bridge. They talked about replacing the Tappan Zee Bridge for 20 years, literally. Every new governor would get elected, and they would come, and the governor would say, oh, one of the first things I'm going to do is replace the Tappan Zee Bridge. I do that because that's how governors talk. One of the first things I'm going to do is replace the Tappan Zee Bridge because it is very dangerous. And we fear that we could have an emergency on the Tappan Zee Bridge because it's dangerous, it's not stable. And the Tappan Zee Bridge had literally holes in the cement where they put these big metal plates over the hole. And you would watch the vehicle in front of you hit this metal plate, and the metal plate would shift just a little bit. And you would see a little daylight come up through the middle from that plate. And you would say, that's it, I'm going to hit this plate, my luck, I'm going right down into the water, Open the window in the car. I'm thinking, how do I get out? Tappan Zee Bridge, 20 years. But never happened. We said 4 years ago, we're going to build a new Tappan Zee Bridge. We're going to get it done. It's on time. It's on budget. It's rising from the water. It's actually happening, right? Making government work. Kosciuszko Bridge is another one closer to home. Kosciuszko Bridge was, by design, problematic. The hill on the Kosciuszko was so high that it was very hard for trucks to go up to Kosciuszko. And that's why the traffic always slowed down. My father, God rest his soul, I remember being in the car with my father as a kid, and we'd be making good time because, you know, it's a big competition, who can get from here to here the fastest way, who took the right road, you took the Grand Central, I took the LIE, you should have taken the BQE. And he'd be making great time, and we get to the BQE, to the Kosciuszko, and it would stop. There would be a wall. And he used to call it Death Valley because it's right near the cemeteries there. I spent about 7 months of my life in traffic on the Kosciuszko Bridge. And they kept saying, we're going to take it down, and we're going to change it, and we're going to take the pitch out so it's faster. Never happened, never happened, never happened. Next few months, we're going to open a new Kosciuszko Bridge. That's going to open up traffic all across the board. LaGuardia Airport, poor Vice President Biden. You remember what we did to Vice President Biden? Vice President Biden is a friend of mine. He's a lovely man. He tends to, how do I say this nicely? I didn't have enough coffee. He tends to be very frank and sometimes say things in ways that he later regrets. So he said about LaGuardia Airport, you know, if they blindfolded you on a plane and you landed at LaGuardia and they took off the blindfold when you were in the terminal, you would think you were in a third world nation. Now, all the New York politicians said, oh my God, the insult. I think Councilman Corning, didn't you attack the Vice President for that? No. Oh my God, what an insult this is to insult our airport. It's terrible. I said, the man is right. The airport is hell. It's a hell airport. It is a terrible experience. And it's true. But for many years, now we're going to build a whole new LaGuardia Airport. We're going to build a whole new JFK Airport, by the way. Buffalo is a city in upstate New York, has been deteriorating for 50 years, the poorest city in the state. Everybody talked about it. We went in there 4 years ago. We invested $1 billion. The city's done a 180, and it's on its way back. Jobs are coming back. Young people are coming back. So you can make a difference. And we're making a difference all across the board, especially downstate, big programs that were never done before. And we're going to do them, and we're going to get them done because government can operate. And there's an area where government has failed, but government needs to revisit. And that is the area that there are still entrenched pockets of poverty in this state, in our cities, that we have still yet to conquer. We understand it. We've talked about it. We've tried before. We've been trying for decades. Here in Brooklyn, 1967, you had one of the founding experiments in housing community development, the Bedford-Stuyvesant Restoration Project, which was a really visionary effort. Back when I was 11 years old, I was building housing in East New York. I was doing community development in East New York with an organization called HELP and Genesis, new models of housing, new models of community development. But for too many years, the approach was always the same. It was always a piecemeal approach. We do a little housing here. We do a program here. It was never coordinated. It was never comprehensive. The community was never at the table to really design it. And you wound up with this piecemeal approach all across the board, but never really an effective, comprehensive, holistic development, even though we knew that's what we always needed. but we never reached it. You need an approach that empowers the community, but where government is providing the resources and the tools so the community can empower itself. Bill Clinton used to talk about this. I was HUD secretary and we used to work on it together. His approach was called empowerment zones. They were geographic zones where the community would come together. They designed what they needed, but the government was there to provide the approach. Empowerment zones made a great, great difference. It's a great legacy to President Clinton because he went into places that nobody wanted to go into because it was just difficult. And all too often, politicians avoid the difficult. I do it the exact opposite. The job of government is to go into the tough places with the tough problems that nobody's been able to solve for years. That's where you want to go. You don't want to run from that. You want to run towards that. And that's exactly what Bill Clinton did with empowerment zones. Poorest places in the United States, but the empowerment zone model worked. There are other models across the country that do the same thing. The Cleveland model, comprehensive, holistic, where you bring the community and you provide the resources, they build themselves up. Where do you start? You start in the community of greatest need, right? Why did we work in Buffalo first? Because that was the city that had the greatest need. It was the poorest city in upstate New York. When Rochester, Syracuse, Albany say to me, I hate you, you gave Buffalo $1 billion, you didn't give us anything, I say Buffalo needed the money the most. What is the area in this state that has the greatest social need? If you look at unemployment rates, food stamps, physical inactivity, number of murders, one of the greatest areas of need in the entire state is Central Brooklyn. And it's not even close. On the numbers, that is the area of need. So, we want to employ a new model in Central Brooklyn. We want to take what we know needs to be done, and we want to provide those resources for the communities in Central Brooklyn to be in a position to help themselves. And we know that it is a comprehensive approach that treats the entire needs of the individual and the entire needs of the family and the entire needs of the community. Yes, it's housing, it's resiliency. It's also open space and parks and recreation where people can relax and experience Mother Nature and a different side of the world. It's education, education, education. It's after 3 o'clock, after school education and mentoring. It's evening schools that are open with recreation to give kids an alternative to the street. It's all of the above. Community-based anti-violence programs, economic development, because it's jobs, jobs, jobs. And if a young person doesn't have that job at the end and doesn't have the skills and doesn't have an alternative, no good is going to happen. We're going to provide the resources. We have studied Central Brooklyn. We have looked at areas where there are what we call need gaps, where you have gaps in the provision of services or health care, et cetera. And we are going to provide the resources for the communities to design those programs in those areas. And we're going to have a comprehensive approach, and that's why all the commissioners are here, because we're going to go from soup to nuts, from healthcare to housing to education to economic development, all focused and all coordinated. Something that we have never done before and never done in any area of the state that we want to do in Central Brooklyn, because Central Brooklyn needs it, and it has for a long, long, long time. And it has to end, and it has to start to end now. I'm going to turn it over to Alfonso David, my counsel, and then Karim Kamara to explain some details. Thank you.
I'm a little shorter than the governor, so I need the stool. Good morning, everyone. So as the governor mentioned, we are launching Vital Brooklyn, And there are a number of different components to this initiative. I will walk through the first few pieces, and Karim Kamara will finish up the presentation. The first piece, of course, is focusing on the tools for wellness. Open space and recreation are critical to wellness. We first have to eliminate Central Brooklyn's park deserts by building green spaces and revitalizing athletic facilities within a 10-minute walk of every neighborhood in Central Brooklyn. Now, the statistics tell the story. Central Brooklyn residents have some of the fewest opportunities for physical fitness in the entire state. When you look at the population with adequate physical activity, inadequate physical activity, I would say 84% in Central Brooklyn compared to 53% for the rest of the state. We're going to address this problem by enhancing amenities at more than a dozen community gardens and schoolyards to create public spaces for recreation and fitness. We're also going to create more than 5 acres of recreation space at state-funded housing developments and improve and enhance existing recreational facilities with grant opportunities. You can see from that map that this is going to be widely distributed throughout Central Brooklyn. We want to make sure that there are open spaces and recreation throughout the area. Second, with respect to wellness, we have to focus on healthy food. We have to promote healthy lifestyles, and by doing that, we will increase access to nutritious food. Look at the statistics. 1 in 4 Central Brooklynites are food insecure. And what that means is they lack quality, variety, and desirability in their diet. 25% in Central Brooklyn as opposed to 14% in the rest of the state. The governor is proposing that Vital Brooklyn's farm-to-table initiatives will connect upstate growers with downstate families, providing youth job training as well as lifelong healthy habits. And specifically, we want to increase access to locally sourced food by adding more than a dozen new farmers markets at community schools, provide job training for our young people here in Central Brooklyn through a partnership with the United Federation of Teachers, and provide existing community gardens with additional resources to expand the services that they currently provide. If you look at the map again, you see that we're looking at addressing this problem throughout Central Brooklyn to make sure that healthy food is available for all Central Brooklynites. Next, community-based healthcare. Community-based healthcare is critical to wellness. Communities need healthcare facilities that not only recognize their needs, but prioritize their needs. If you look at these statistics compared to the rest of the state, Central Brooklyn lacks access to primary care, doctors, as well as other critical mental health services. As an example, primary care physicians per 100,000 people, 55 in Central Brooklyn, compared to 112 in the rest of the state. So double the number of primary care physicians in New York State compared to what you have in Central Brooklyn. The governor wants to address this problem by proposing that we create a local healthcare facilities or a series of healthcare facilities to close the current gaps and increase services. How do we do that? We will transform our existing healthcare system by strengthening the local hospitals that exist already and increasing access to quality services. We will also develop 36-site ambulatory care network for Central Brooklyn. And this will include partnerships with existing community-based providers to make sure that Central Brooklynites have access to health care, because that is critical to wellness. Now look at this map, overlaying open space and recreation, healthy food, as well as community-based health care throughout Central Brooklyn. The last component of the wellness piece is focusing on a well-rounded education. A well-rounded education requires a lot more than simply in-class learning. We want to make sure we have comprehensive education and youth development. And we will do that in a variety of ways. We have the Billion Oyster Project, and we also have the Department of Environmental Conservation Environmental Justice programs. And we will be using both of those programs to expose our young people, at-risk youth, to Jamaica Bay through hands-on shoreline and habitat restoration efforts. We want to make sure that they have access to these projects so that they learn about how to become professionals and potentially become entrepreneurs. And specifically, we want to add more than 30 new environmental education sites across the community in Central Brooklyn. We want to expand the Oyster Bay Project, school-based curriculum, to 20 sites. And that is going to expose more than 9,000 students to the Oyster Restoration Project, as well as the Staten Island Living Backwaters Project. This is huge for these kids. We will also leverage DEC's environmental justice program to engage nearly 100 at-risk youth in green jobs training and habitat restoration projects. When you look at this map, without the dots, you see that there is an uncoordinated effort. But with the dots, you see that the governor is proposing open space and recreation, healthy food, community-based healthcare, as well as comprehensive education and youth development to address the problem that we have in Brooklyn, which is access as well as a problem in wellness. We want to make sure that we think about this holistically and comprehensively so we address the problem as opposed to dealing with these issues piecemeal, which is what the governor was mentioning a few minutes ago. Vital Brooklyn will give these historically underserved communities the resources as well as the choices. It's not only the resources. We want to make sure that we are empowering the community and providing them with the choices to build a way forward. The second component of the program focuses on building a stronger and safer community. And for that, Karim Kamara, the Executive Director of the Office of Faith-Based Community Development, will walk through the PowerPoint.
Good morning. Pleasure and honor to be here with you. Good to see so many friends and leaders. My pleasure to present you with this part of the program. You heard about the first part of the governor's plan that focuses on wellness. Now we will focus on some of the steps we will take to build a stronger and safer community. First, we will be addressing economic development and job creation. To start, we give residents of all ages the resources for economic empowerment, including financial literacy, entrepreneurship opportunities, job training, and placement programs. But let's look why this is so significant. Let's look at the unemployment rates here in Brooklyn. Over the last 5 years, the average unemployment rate in Central Brooklyn has been 12.2% versus 9.5% in New York City. Those are some alarming stats. Here are some of the actions we will be taking. We will add 7,600 new hires through the Brooklyn Unemployment Strike Force, preparing the workforce to meet new market demands, expand Green City Force AmeriCorps program, providing NYCHA youth with higher paying opportunities, train 1,200 people in the construction trades through the expanded Unemployed Workers Training Program. We'll provide leadership, education, and job training skills to 300+ students through CUNY's Workforce Development Initiative. And we'll deploy Mobile Command Center to increase financial literacy. As you see here on this map, the red dots are the areas that are going to be positively influenced by these economic empowerment and job creation initiatives. In addition to providing opportunities for economic development and empowerment, the governor's plan also addresses community-based violence prevention. To make our neighborhoods safer, we will expand violence prevention programs. We'll create opportunities for youth engagement and increase support for victims. And the reason we need to be so focused on community-based violence prevention is because of these staggering statistics that we have right here before us. The homicide rate in Central Brooklyn is nearly triple the statewide rate. If you look at these numbers, you can see the rate in Central Brooklyn is close to 8.6%. while the rate hovers at just over 3% in other parts of the state. To address this, we will support community-based snug initiatives that conduct outreach and prevent gun violence. We will also enhance more than 20 anti-violence programs. We'll establish new midnight basketball programs throughout the community by partnering with groups such as the Police Athletic League and the YMCA. And as you can see, the gray dots on this map are the areas that will be positively impacted by these community-based violence prevention initiatives. Another key area that we will be addressing is affordable housing. I think that everyone, that's right. That's right. I think that everyone here will agree that every family deserves a safe and decent place to call home. But in Brooklyn, that can be a challenge. Residents of Central Brooklyn pay approximately half of the total household income on rent alone. 50% of the household income is spent on rent compared to 32% in other parts of the city and state. We are addressing this burden with new affordable housing that also encourages active lifestyles and increases access to preventative care. Under the governor's plan, there will be several options available to the community. We'll build 3,000 plus new multifamily affordable housing units at 6 state-owned sites. And, which is key, we will be looking for your input to shape this plan. Some of these options include supportive services, housing for the developmentally disabled, seniors, and formerly incarcerated, publicly accessible open space, and pathways to home ownership. And on this map, the brown dots that you see indicate the locations to be developed with new affordable housing programs, again, based on your input. And finally, we will address resiliency. Central Brooklyn faces a dual challenge of being vulnerable to extreme weather, and its need for electricity is also increasing. To address this, we will invest in sustainable practices, including renewable and redundant energy sources, energy efficiency, and green jobs training. We will reduce energy costs for homeowners and businesses through 382 solar projects. We'll complete 62 multifamily and 87 single-family energy efficiency projects. We'll support development of 15 new cogeneration projects. We'll advance the Clarkson Avenue microgrid, linking Kings County Hospital, SUNY Downstate Medical Center, and Kingsborough Psychiatric Center with a resilient source of on-site backup power. And as you can see from this map again, there's going to be a broad array of services and programs across the region, including a vast array of resiliency projects. With Governor Cuomo's comprehensive proposal, we will empower the communities of Central Brooklyn. It's now my pleasure to turn it back over to our governor, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Beautiful job. Thank you. I told you I was excited. I'm excited about the midnight basketball because it's a program my father started, because it did great things for community, and because he liked to play basketball. And I think I'm going to take Councilman Carnegie out there on the court. I think I can get around him. What do you think? No, I don't think so either. In closing, this is exciting. And I want you to know it's not going to be easy. We're going to provide the resources, but it is up to you as community leaders and members of the community to make it work or not make it work. We can provide help, we can provide support, we can provide resources, but it's up to you. I was HUD secretary. I was all over the country doing urban revitalization. I was in the Colonias on the Texas-Mexico border where the migrant workers, migrant farm workers live. Chicago Housing Authority. Some of the poorest census tracts in the United States are the Chicago Housing Authority. 11 miles of high-rises is the Chicago Housing Authority. So I worked in Los Angeles, worked all around the country. And some communities did great things, some communities didn't. We provide the resources, but you have to provide the leadership, and you have to provide the motivation. We are not saying what housing should go where. You have to make those determinations. Central Brooklyn is actually too big an area to plan as one. It's about 10 assembly districts. We're going to have to do this like assembly district by assembly district, bringing in the community, involving them, getting them vested in the solution. My colleagues in elected office are going to have to be community leaders, bringing people together, making them part of the program. You can't impose anything on the community. You can't come to the community and say, let me tell you what I think you need. Who cares what you think? It is about what they think they need and how they put that together. And it's going to be a little different in every different community. Some communities need more housing. Some communities need more jobs. Some communities are going to want more open space. It's going to be a little different in each one. And we're really providing a menu of resources for you to have when you design that approach with the community. That's how this is going to have to work. But the piece that hasn't been there in the past is going to be there, which is you're going to have the funding. And this is not an inexpensive undertaking. The open space and recreation is about $140 million. Healthy food, $325. You can see the numbers. You add it up, it's a $1.4 billion plan. Now, billion with a B is a lot of money, even on the state budget. And the state budget is going to have to pass on April 1, if this is going to happen. And I want my colleagues in the Assembly and the Senate to know that we're going to need them to go back up to Albany, and they're going to have to be ready for war when they go back. Mr. Mosley, and Mr. Parker, and Ms. Prasad, and Mr. Hamilton, because $1 billion for a small area is a lot of money. And the argument is going to be, well, $1 billion, that's too much money. And I would say they're exactly wrong. And we have made this mistake as a society for too long. This is the old story of you can pay me now or you can pay me later. You can either pay for a proper upbringing for a child with proper health care and proper support and proper education, or you can pay for a lifetime of dysfunction. And we have been backwards, and we have been paying for the dysfunction. And we do it across the board. You want to talk about expensive? $50,000 a year to keep a person in prison, that is expensive. $50,000 is more than the tuition of Harvard University to keep a person in a prison cell. Drug abuse is expensive. A New York Police Department of 50,000 policemen, that's expensive, trying to keep people safe. Murder is expensive. It is the dysfunction that is expensive. I would much rather invest early on, prevent the problem in the first place, than paying for the manifestation of it later on. And that is the argument that this initiative is going to raise. Are we going to stick to the old short-sighted thinking of trying to save money on the front end, but then spend money on the back end, or are we finally going to flip the priorities and say, no, we're going to invest up front? When I was in my 20s, I wasn't really 11 in that picture of Help One. I was in my 20s, I built Help One, I built the Genesis Project in East New York or Pennsylvania Avenue, Sutter, and Hinsdale, 7-5 police precinct, which was really a tough area back then. But we named it Help One. And somebody said to me, well, where did you get the name Help One? I said, Mother Teresa was asked, how do you begin to solve a problem the magnitude of the starving in India? And she said, you help one, you help one, you help one, and after a while you have helped many. This problem, Central Brooklyn, this problem has existed 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It is overwhelming on one hand to say we're going to go in and we're going to try to make a difference. And when we first started talking about this, my team looked at me and their heads sort of all turned. You know, because it is a daunting challenge. But the truth is, we have never tried to do it right. And it's not going to be easy, and we're not going to do it overnight. But it's help one, help one, help one, and after a while, you help many. If you can make a difference in one child's life, it would all be worth it. If you can make a difference in one family's life, if you wind up saving one life, it'll all be worth it. You have the resources. The community has the need. You have the ability to organize and mobilize. Let's make a difference in people's lives. Let's make Central Brooklyn better, and together we will. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. Before we leave, I want to acknowledge some elected officials who've arrived. Senator Kevin Parker, yes. Former Assemblymember Roger Green, Jill Ferrillo, the Executive Director of the New York State Nurses Association, and the great Borough President of Brooklyn, Eric Adams. We want to thank Governor Cuomo because this plan reflects our priorities. This plan is going to create a healthier, more sustainable, and more integrated Brooklyn community. It responds to your needs that the rent is too damn high. And so we want to thank the governor. We look forward to working with him and his team to build a stronger, brighter future for all of us. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you so much.